He might be like the Michael Jordan of snitching, you know? Like, think about Tom Brady and Michael Jordan and how good they are at what they do. Charleston White may be that, but like to snitching. Like, we thought 6ix9ine was the one. It may be Charleston White. Anyways, let's do this script. Charleston White is a former gang member who, after serving nearly a decade behind bars for some pretty major juvenile transgressions, has now managed to turn his life around by both sharing his story on social media with one or two, or maybe a whole bunch of controversial opinions sprinkled in along the way. These days, he tends to introduce himself as the CEO and founder of HYPE, which stands for Helping Young People Excel. What really seems to grab people's attention is the way that he refuses to mince words and never holds back from a seemingly endless barrage of controversial opinions on everything from DMX to George Floyd. So how did Charleston White go from a kid looking at potentially spending his adult life behind bars to somebody hoping to prevent others from doing the exact same? Well, you're about to find out that and a whole bunch more on this new episode of Before They Were Famous. But before we get started, please take a few seconds to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. That really helps us with our visibility here on YouTube and ensures that we continue our daily content and, keeping you guys entertained. And without further ado, let's get right into this story. Charleston White was born in Fort Worth, Texas, sometime in 1969. His father is believed to have been an officer in the Navy, and his mother was a housewife. Unfortunately for Charleston, he didn't have much proper male guidance, and has said on multiple occasions that he barely knew his father at all. This lack of having a decent role model in his life would lead to him joining his local Crips affiliation, which took his life down a dark and dangerous path. While a member of the Crips, White would perpetuate and take part in a series of criminal activities, while working himself up to becoming a gang leader, including everything from robbery to assault. As a youngster, he also believed that any crime he could potentially perpetuate against white people was fair game, considering the oppression African Americans had to suffer through in the past.
Ban him! Don't let him speak again! That talking about hurting Massa. That talking about hurting Miss Lily. He talking about taking Miss Lily pussy.
But one particular incident that took place when White was only 14 years old would change his trajectory forever. At this point in his still young life, when White had run away from home, he was spending nights holed up at one of his associates' parents' house. In order to get by, he and his boys would spend their day stealing anything they could get away with, which leads us to what happened at a local Foot Locker. Always seems to happen at a Foot Locker. While in the process of trying to get away from the store with an athletic jacket, a white man stepped up to stop White and his friends.
Out of a Foot Locker, three of us went in, we ran out with the starter jackets. As we approached the car, there was a good Samaritan, a guy by the name of Michael Levy, which is my victim, saw what was happening, and he tried to thwart us, he tried to stop us from getting away with those jackets, and in the process, my 16-year-old friend, actually 15-year-old friend, shot and killed Mr. Levy in the parking lot.
The audacity of this man enraged White, so he told his 15-year-old associate to use a weapon that they had stolen from White's girlfriend's home, who was a Dallas police officer, by the way, to shoot the man who was attempting to stop them. And that's exactly what this kid did. Talking with Revolt, White later said about this moment, and he shot and killed a white man. I laughed like a motherfucker with an underdeveloped brain. While White himself may have not been the trigger man, he would soon come to realize that for all intents and purposes, he was as guilty of murder as his friend who actually did it. After committing this heartless crime, White and his friends became the first juveniles in their county to be sentenced for murder under what was known as the Texas Determining Sentence Law. Because he was only 14 years old at the time, White was then sent to a Texas Youth Council lockup at the Giddings State School, where he spent the next 4 years not particularly behaving like he had learned his lesson.
And based on my behavior, the state recommendation was for me to be transferred to the adult prison system. I was caught up into gang activities. The state had a very strong recommendation for me to be transferred until the Texas Department of Corrections.
Come the time of his 18th birthday, White was due to be moved to an adult facility, something that he feels to this day his actions had warranted. And yet there was a series of guardians at Giddings who had seen potential in White and stepped in to prevent this from happening. This combination of house parents, caseworkers, psychologists, and teachers saw something in White, and he would later explain what happened next while writing a piece for the Texas Tribune by stating, They risked their lives to tell the judge. This kid has the potential to be somebody. Ultimately, the judge on the case decided to go against the state's recommendation that White be transferred to an adult facility and sided with the members of Giddings who believed he could be reformed. White was then sent back to state school where he would spend the next 4 years of his life. But now that these relative strangers had stuck their neck out for him, White became determined to repay their confidence. Once back in lockup, White dedicated himself to learning accountability and taking responsibility for his actions. What's more, it was during this time in his life that he had developed his sense of morals and learning how to empathize with others. The group therapy he was a part of in these years was a big help in this regard, and also taught him how to think critically while processing his anger in more positive ways. Reminiscing over this turning point in his life and people who had helped him ensure it would happen, White would write, "I've always heard juvenile justice advocates and officials say, if I can just reach one kid, then I've done my job. I was that one kid. Job well done." After serving 7 years in total, White was finally released at the age of 21. It was then that he realized yet another important lesson. Most of his friends and associates from his life were now in the adult prison system, many of whom were serving 20 years or more, including his friend who had pulled the trigger 7 years earlier, who is now serving a 75-year sentence for the crime. And while White's own mental development wasn't yet where it should be in terms of his age, he knew enough to understand that he was lucky he wasn't one of them. So upon his release from prison, White became determined to turn himself around and become a pillar in his community. He hasn't been back to prison since, but there would be one more close call in his life. After getting released, White became emboldened by his environment once again and began trafficking drugs. He was eventually caught in Oklahoma while trying to move 10 pounds of marijuana, and once more faced a turning point. He fought back against the charge and wound up with a mistrial. White was then offered a choice: serve 6 months in prison boot camp or 5 years of deferred probation. White chose the latter and became set on turning his life around for a second time. So he decided to head back to school and become a pre-law student at Texas Wesleyan University in his hometown of Fort Worth, where he worked towards earning a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Then in 2012, he founded the Hype Outreach program to give back to his community and share his story to inspire the younger generation and ensure that they didn't make the same kind of mistakes that he did.
So in the process of me trying to find something to do community service, I discovered my purpose in life. And that's working with kids, sharing my life story, sharing my pasthood experience, my childhood experiences, in hopes of making a difference in young people's life.
He also began volunteering his time at the Texas Juvenile Department as well, in honor of the people who helped turn his life around. More recently, however, White has become something of a social media mainstay, recognizing that with advances in technology, he now had the opportunity to affect people outside of his Texas community. White created his YouTube channel, The Real Charleston White, in April of 2020, but his emergence as a social media influencer has not been without controversy. In fact, White has come under fire multiple times in the past few years, especially in regards to comments he shared about the deaths of individuals like George Floyd and DMX, both of whom he suggested played a large part in their own demise.
And if you land on me like that, homie, I got a will to live. I ain't finna lay there peacefully and let you just peacefully kill me. I'm gonna flop. I'm gonna kick. I'm gonna spit. I wanna live, homie. I saw a man that didn't have the will to live when I saw George Floyd die.
He's also a strong believer that hip-hop and rap are degrading African-American culture, while more or less being given a free pass to do so.
Yeah, I hate rappers. Yeah, I keep trying. Last time I tried to clean up, I hate them up. You're gonna say, yeah.
Because they don't talk about God enough.
Well, no, they gonna kill 50 and ain't gonna kill now. They gonna kill 50 on a song, but ain't gonna kill nobody in person.
White has been adamant that the content he posts online, and more importantly, how he presents himself, is simply a way to capitalize off a culture that wants to monetize the types of things that White used to do back in his criminal enterprising days. And I mean, if the culture is willing to make money off that type of thing, then so is he. He told Revolt, "I'm trying to figure out how they're making trillions just off of us being on here, and we ain't getting $1. All these platforms monetizing, so I came to monetize." With that being said, White doesn't want to conflate his online personality with that of the life-changing work he attempts in his community with his youth program.
Go look in the mirror, because that's where it started. Charity starts in the home. It don't start in your community. It don't start in the black community.
But whether or not people will gravitate towards the more sensational material he regularly posts online over, say, all the work he does on the streets remains to be seen. Although in all honesty, with as often as White pops up on social media to discuss his many controversial statements, I don't know, I'm kind of betting on sensationalism will win this one. I mean, when does it not? As for where Charleston White and his crusade goes next, well, that'll be a story for another time and another place. After all, this is before they were famous. Thank you everybody for watching. Please remember to take a second to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications before heading out, all that good stuff. And if you'd like to check out some of our other content in this series, please be sure to check out our looks on Sauce Moolah and Too Mad. My name is Clyde Smith, and I'll see you guys in another video.